Look at this cucumber plant. I mean, really look at it. It is the middle of August. The air is thick enough to drink, and this thing is still pumping out crisp, dark green fruit like it is late June. The leaves are broad. They are deep green, no powdery mildew in sight, no yellowing edges. Now look at the one right next to it, just 6 feet away. Same soil, same sun, same watering schedule. It is a yellow, spindly mess with maybe 2 bitter, misshapen cucumbers hanging on for dear life. The difference between these 2 plants is something I did exactly one time, right at the base of the stem, about 6 weeks ago. It cost me less than $1, and it took approximately 45 seconds to apply. The reason you have likely never heard of this is honestly kind of annoying. It works too well and costs too little for anyone to make a profit selling it to you. I have been growing cucumbers for a good 15 years, and for the first 10 of those, I was locked in the same exhausting cycle you probably know all too well. You start the seeds indoors with so much hope. You build the trellis, you amend the soil, you water diligently. The first flush of fruit is glorious. You are making pickles, you are giving them to neighbors, you feel like a genius. And then somewhere around the middle of July, the plant just gives up. The leaves start to look like crumpled tissue paper. The new fruit comes in stubby and pale, with that distinctive hooked shape, like a tiny green talon. The taste goes from sweet and watery to dense and bitter. You water more, thinking it is heat stress. You add a general fertilizer, hoping for a boost. Nothing works. The plant has made a decision, and you are not part of it. I know exactly what you might be thinking right now. Probably just another miracle internet trick that involves dumping a weird kitchen slurry on your soil that will attract every ant in the county. I completely understand your skepticism. I thought exactly the same thing until I saw with my own eyes what this single, humble mineral can do. It is not vinegar, it is not salt, and it is certainly not any harsh chemical. I have a picture here of my cucumber patch from last year, taken on August 10th. The plants were toast. And what you see now in this video is my garden today, August 12th, a full year later, after I finally listened to the quiet, persistent voice of an old gardener who had been trying to tell me the secret for a decade. Her name is Mrs. Kowalska. She lives 2 streets over, and her garden is the kind that makes you slow your car down involuntarily. Perfect rows, 0 weeds, vegetables that look like they belong in a seed catalog from the 1950s. For years, I would ask her how she kept her cucumbers producing so late into the season, and she would just smile and say something vague about taking care of the soil. I thought she was holding out on me. Then last spring, I helped her move a stack of heavy terracotta pots, and she finally decided I had earned the truth. She walked me over to her cucumber trellis, pointed to a plain white powder she kept in an unmarked mason jar in her shed, and said, "Give them this when the first flowers open. Just a little." They will not stop, she was right. They did not stop. And now I am going to show you exactly what that powder was, why it works, and how you can use it to completely change the way your cucumbers perform. Before I reveal it, let me just walk you through the usual fixes that desperate gardeners like us try, because you need to understand why most of them actually make the problem worse. It will help you see why this one specific thing is different. First, there is the vinegar approach. You will see this all over the internet. Someone tells you to acidify your soil with a splash of vinegar in your watering can. Do you know what vinegar does to a struggling cucumber root system? It burns the fine root hairs right off. Cucumbers are incredibly sensitive to pH swings. Their roots are shallow and fibrous. Dumping an acid into already stressed soil is like throwing a bucket of cold water on someone who is already hypothermic. You might see a temporary green-up from the shock, but you have just damaged the very mechanism the plant uses to drink. Then there is the Epsom salt myth. Magnesium sulfate. Gardeners swear by it for blossom end rot, for yellowing leaves. Here is the problem. Most soil is not actually deficient in magnesium. And if you overload the soil with magnesium, it creates a chemical lockout that prevents the plant from absorbing calcium and potassium, the two nutrients cucumbers crave more than anything else. You see yellow leaves and you add Epsom salt. The yellowing gets worse because now the plant cannot access potassium. You add more Epsom salt. You have entered a death spiral and the plant loses. Boiling water. I should not even have to mention this one, but I see it recommended for weeds and soil pests near cucumbers. The steam and heat travel laterally through the soil and cook the shallow feeder roots. Your cucumber plant might not die instantly, but it will be stunned for weeks. A stunned cucumber in July is a dead cucumber walking. And of course, the chemical fungicides and high nitrogen fertilizers. These are the ones that break my heart, because they come in a shiny bottle with a picture of a perfect vegetable on the label, and they promise the world. High nitrogen will give you an explosion of dark green leaves and absolutely zero fruit. The plant thinks it is living in an endless spring and has no biological reason to reproduce. It just builds a jungle of foliage. Meanwhile, the chemical fungicides nuke the soil microbiome, the very network of fungi and bacteria that feeds your plant's roots. You kill the pathogen, sure, but you also kill the beneficial organisms that were keeping the pathogen in check naturally. It is like curing a headache by cutting off your head. Technically it works, but is it a reasonable solution? So what is the thing that misses? Kowalska had in that mason jar. What is the powder that costs pocket change and takes 45 seconds to apply? I am going to tell you right now, and I want you to just sit with it for a second before you dismiss it. It is plain baking soda. Chemically, sodium hydrogen carbonate. That is the one. The same orange box that has been sitting in the back of your refrigerator absorbing odors for the last 3 years. The same stuff you used to make a volcano for a school science project. Baking soda. I can practically hear the objection forming in your mind. Baking soda. That is for baking. It is for cleaning sinks. How can something so mundane possibly keep a cucumber plant fruiting for an extra 6 weeks? I had the exact same reaction when Mrs. Kowalska showed me. I actually laughed a little, thinking she was pulling my leg. But then she explained the mechanism, and I went home, did my own research, and realized that this is not some folk remedy. It is sound, demonstrable plant physiology dressed up in a kitchen ingredient. Here is why it works, and once you understand this, you will never look at your cucumber patch the same way again. The primary reason cucumber plants collapse in midsummer is not heat. It is not lack of water. It is a fungal pathogen called powdery mildew, and its even more destructive cousin, downy mildew. These fungi thrive in the exact condition that cucumbers love. Warm days, humid nights, and dense foliage that traps moisture. The spores land on the leaf surface and send tiny feeding tubes into the plant cells. They steal nutrients and water. The leaf cannot photosynthesize efficiently. The plant goes into starvation mode and aborts its fruit to save itself. Baking soda, when applied as a dilute foliar spray or a light soil drench, changes the pH of the leaf surface. Fungal spores require a slightly acidic environment to germinate and penetrate the leaf tissue. A leaf coated with a microscopic layer of sodium hydrogen carbonate becomes alkaline. The spore lands, find the surface chemistry hostile, and simply cannot establish itself. It does not kill the fungus outright like a harsh chemical. It creates an environment where the fungus cannot get a foothold in the first place. It is preventative, not curative, which is why timing matters so much. You apply it when the first flowers open, before you ever see a speck of white powder on the leaves. You are building a protective buffer, a pH shield. But there is a second, less obvious mechanism, and this is the one that truly extends the fruiting period. The sodium in baking soda, in very trace amounts, acts as a catalyst for potassium uptake. I am going to say that again, because it sounds counterintuitive. We are always told sodium is bad for plants, and in large quantities it is. It desiccates roots and destroys soil structure. But a tiny, controlled amount of sodium ions actually stimulates the ion exchange pumps in the root cell membranes, making them more efficient at pulling potassium from the soil solution. Potassium is the master nutrient for fruit development. It regulates water movement within the plant. It activates enzymes that synthesize sugars and starches, and it strengthens the cell walls of the developing fruit. When a cucumber plant has abundant potassium, the fruit fills out evenly, the skin stays thin and tender, and the bitterness, which is caused by compounds called cucurbitacins, is dramatically reduced. The baking soda gives the plant a gentle nudge to keep mining potassium from the soil long after it would normally have slowed down. Mrs. Kowalska did not explain it to me in those exact terms. She just said, it keeps the leaves clean and the fruit sweet, but the science backs her up completely. And the best part, this is not some new agritech discovery. Gardeners have been using baking soda as a fungal preventative since the early 20th century. It was popularized during the Victory Garden era, when commercial fungicides were rationed or unavailable. It fell out of favor because, well, you cannot patent baking soda. No company can package it, mark it up 800%, and run a television ad campaign. So it faded from the gardening books, replaced by a shelf full of brightly colored bottles that promised the same result for $15 a pop. The knowledge was not lost. It was just buried. All right, let me give you the exact recipe and the exact method. No guesswork. I want you to succeed the first time you try this, because I know how disheartening it is to lose a crop in August. You will need 3 things. First, a box of plain baking soda. Arm & Hammer, generic store brand, it does not matter. Just make sure it is pure sodium hydrogen carbonate, not baking powder, which contains aluminum compounds and cornstarch that you absolutely do not want on your plants. Second, you need a clean pump sprayer. A 1-gallon garden sprayer is perfect. Do not use a sprayer that has previously held herbicides or synthetic fertilizers. The residue will linger, and you will fry your cucumbers. If you do not have a dedicated sprayer, go buy a new one. They cost about $12 at any hardware store. This is a one-time investment that will last years. Third, you need a surfactant. I know that sounds technical. All it means is something that breaks the surface tension of the water, so the spray spreads evenly across the waxy cucumber leaf, instead of beating up and rolling off. The best surfactant is a pure Castile liquid soap, unscented, with no degreasers or antibacterial agents. Dr. Bronner's is the standard, but any pure liquid Castile soap works. You need exactly half a teaspoon. If you cannot find Castile soap, a few drops of a mild, natural dish soap without bleach or strong detergents will work in a pinch, but I strongly prefer the Castile because it is gentler on the soil biology. That is the whole list. Baking soda, water, a sprayer, and a tiny bit of soap. The total cost per application, if you already own the sprayer, is about 15 cents. Less than the spare change in your car cup holder. Now the recipe. This is critical. More is not better. If you mix this too strong, you will burn the leaves and damage the soil. Respect the ratios. Fill your 1-gallon sprayer with clean, room temperature water. Do not use ice-cold water from the hose. You will shock the plant tissue. Just let the water sit in the sun for an hour to take the chill off. Add exactly 1 tablespoon of baking soda. Not a heaping tablespoon, not a scoop that looks about right. A level, measured tablespoon. 1. Add half a teaspoon of the liquid Castile soap. Seal the sprayer. Shake it gently for about 30 seconds until the baking soda is fully dissolved. You should not see any granules swirling around. The solution will look slightly cloudy. That is perfect. Now the application. This is where most people mess up, and then they tell me it did not work. Do not apply this in full sun. I repeat, do not apply this in full sun. The water droplets will act like tiny magnifying glasses and scorch the leaves, and the rapid evaporation will concentrate the baking soda and cause salt burn. The best time to apply is in the early evening, about an hour before sunset. The sun is low, the stomata on the leaves are beginning to close for the night, and the solution will have time to dry slowly and evenly on the leaf surface. The second best time is very early morning, just after dawn, but I find evening applications are more effective because the protective coating stays intact through the humid night when fungal spores are most active. When you spray, you are not trying to drench the plant. You are aiming for a fine, even mist that coats both the tops and the undersides of the leaves. The undersides are where powdery mildew spores typically land first, because they are sheltered from direct sunlight. Crouch down, angle the sprayer nozzle upward, and make sure you get good coverage on the hidden parts of the plant. Spray the stems, the leaf petioles, the developing fruit. Avoid spraying the open flowers directly if you can, because you do not want to interfere with pollinators, but a little incidental mist on the flowers will not hurt anything. How often do you apply this? Here is the schedule that has worked flawlessly for me. The first application goes on when the first true flowers open. Not the cotyledons, not the first tiny buds, but when you see those bright yellow, star-shaped flowers unfurling and the bees start visiting. That is your signal. Apply the baking soda spray that evening. Then apply it again, exactly 7 days later. Then apply it every 10 to 14 days for the rest of the season, depending on your weather. If you are in a humid climate with frequent rain, lean toward every 10 days, because rain washes the protective residue off. If you are in a dry climate, every 2 weeks is sufficient. After a heavy rainstorm, reapply as soon as the foliage dries. Now, there is a second method that misses. Kowalska showed me, and this is the one I referenced at the very beginning of this video. The root application. About 6 weeks into the fruiting cycle, when the plant has been pumping out cucumbers nonstop and is starting to look a little tired, you can give it a direct root zone boost. This is the sprinkle a little on the roots part. Mix 1 teaspoon of baking soda into 1 gallon of water. Stir until it is completely dissolved. Pour this slowly around the base of the plant, about a cup per plant, directly onto the soil, not on the stem. Do this in the morning, so the water has time to percolate down to the roots before the heat of the day. This soil drench does 2 things. It very slightly raises the pH of the immediate root zone, which helps suppress soil-borne fungal pathogens like fusarium and pythium that cause root rot and sudden wilt. And it delivers that tiny sodium catalyst directly to the root membrane ion pumps I mentioned earlier. You are essentially giving the plant a second wind, a little electrochemical nudge that says, keep pulling potassium, keep making fruit. The season is not over yet. I did this root drench on August 1st last year. By August 20th, my plants were still setting new fruit while my neighbor's plants, the ones I did not treat, were brown and crispy. The difference was so stark that he came over and asked me what kind of miracle chemical I was using. When I showed him the box of baking soda, he actually got angry. Not at me, but at the decades he had spent buying expensive fungicides that never quite delivered. I understand that frustration. I have lived it. Let me address the elephant in the room, because I know someone is going to ask in the comments. Does the sodium from the baking soda build up in the soil and ruin it over time? This is a valid and intelligent question. The answer is no, not at the concentrations and frequencies I am describing. 1 tablespoon of baking soda per gallon of water, applied to the leaves, deposits an incredibly minute amount of sodium on the soil surface. Most of it stays on the foliage and is eventually washed off and diluted to homeopathic levels by rain and irrigation. The root drench uses even less, a single teaspoon per gallon, and you are doing it once, maybe twice a season. To put this in perspective, the amount of sodium you are adding to the soil with a single root drench is roughly equivalent to the sodium that naturally falls in an inch of rainwater in a coastal region. It is negligible. What you must never do is apply baking soda as a heavy, frequent soil amendment. Do not dump a whole box on the ground thinking if a little is good, a lot is better. That will absolutely destroy your soil structure and kill your plants. This is a precise, minimal intervention, not a soil drenching regime. Another common question: can I use this on other plants? The answer is yes, with caution. Baking soda spray is an effective preventative fungicide for squash, zucchini, melons, and pumpkins, all of which belong to the cucurbit family and suffer from the same powdery mildew issues. It also works on tomatoes for early blight and on roses for black spot. But do not use it on plants that are acid-loving, like blueberries, azaleas, or rhododendrons. The alkaline nature of the spray will antagonize their root systems. And never use it on plants with fuzzy or hairy leaves, like African violets or lamb's ear, because the solution gets trapped in the leaf hairs and causes rot. I want to tell you about one more thing I noticed after I started using this method, something I did not expect. The insect pressure dropped. Not to zero, nothing ever drops pest pressure to zero, but significantly. Cucumber beetles, aphids, and spider mites were less interested in my treated plants. I did some digging and found that the mild alkaline film on the leaves seems to disrupt the feeding and egg-laying behavior of certain soft-bodied insects. It is not an insecticide. It does not kill them, but it makes the leaf surface less palatable, less hospitable. The beetles would land, take a few tentative nibbles, and fly off to find something more appealing. The aphids, which normally cluster on the undersides of the leaves in dense colonies, were sparse and slow to reproduce. This was a bonus effect I had not anticipated, and it made me appreciate the baking soda approach even more. It is not a sledgehammer. It is a subtle shift in the environment that favors the plant and disfavors the pests and pathogens. It works with the plant's own biology, instead of carpet bombing the entire ecosystem. Let me give you a few real talk cautions, because I want you to have a perfect experience. First, test the spray on a single leaf before you blanket your entire plant. Wait 24 hours. Look for any signs of leaf tip burn or discoloration. Different cucumber varieties have different levels of sensitivity. The common slicing varieties like Marketmore and Straight 8 handle it beautifully. Some of the more delicate heirloom varieties, like lemon cucumber or Armenian yard long, can be slightly more sensitive. If you see any adverse reaction, reduce the concentration to half a tablespoon per gallon for that variety. Second, do not mix baking soda with anything else. I know the temptation to create a super brew. You want to add neem oil or kelp extract or fish emulsion. Do not do it. Baking soda is reactive. It can saponify oils, alter the pH of other additives, and create compounds that are phytotoxic. Apply your baking soda spray on its own, and if you want to use other foliar feeds or pest deterrents, wait at least 3 days between applications. Third, this method prevents powdery mildew. It does not cure an active, severe infestation. If your plant is already covered in a chalky white film and the leaves are curling and dying, it is too late for baking soda to save it. You need to remove the worst affected leaves, apply an approved organic fungicide like copper soap or sulfur, and then, once the disease is under control, start the baking soda regimen to prevent recurrence. Think of baking soda as a shield, not a sword. I have been using this method for 3 full seasons now. My cucumber harvest has extended from a disappointing 6-week window to a glorious, almost continuous harvest from late June through the first frost in late October. I have picked cucumbers in sweaters. I have made pickles in November. The plants look healthy, the fruit tastes incredible, and I have not spent a single dollar on commercial fungicides. The box of baking soda I bought in April is still half full, and it cost me 99 cents. The thing that gets me every time I walk out to the garden now is how simple this all is. We are taught, by every advertisement and every glossy garden center display, that the solution to a plant problem must be complex, expensive, and proprietary. That you need a degree in chemistry and a wallet full of cash to grow a decent cucumber. But the truth that misses. Kowalska knew, and that the old Victory Garden pamphlets knew, and that generations of farmers knew before the agrochemical industry convinced them otherwise, is that the best solutions are often the simplest ones. They are hiding in plain sight, in the back of your refrigerator, in a box that costs less than $1. I want you to try this. Not next year. Now. If your cucumber plants are still green and producing, go mix up a batch this evening and spray them. If they are already declining, bookmark this knowledge for next spring. Apply it when the first flowers open. Be consistent. Watch what happens. And then, when your neighbor leans over the fence and asks you how on earth your cucumbers are still going strong in September, you can smile and decide whether to share the secret or keep them wondering. Hand on heart, how many of you have a cucumber patch that looks tired and yellow right now, in the middle of what should be peak harvest season? I bet it is most of you. I have been there, year after year, until I stopped listening to the marketing and started listening to the old wisdom. This baking soda method is not my invention. It is not new. It is just forgotten knowledge that deserves to be remembered. If this video helped you see your cucumber patch in a new light, give it a like. It helps other frustrated gardeners find this information. Subscribe if you want more practical, tested, no-nonsense gardening advice that does not require a second mortgage. And share this with someone who is about to rip out their yellowing cucumber plants in defeat. The fix is in their kitchen cabinet. They just do not know it yet.